Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. We hope all you guys are doing well out there.
Indeed, we do, and this is always a fun topic.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover, and we could go off in a million different directions. And then sometimes I think, 2 hour, 3 hour videos would be a lot of fun in some ways because we could really uncover things. But then, of course, so few people have the time to do it in one sitting. But yet, that's really what it takes, maybe even 10, 12-hour videos. Of course, you could always break it into a series, but then you get lost in the series. So there's so many things that go together. And when we look at the burning of the library in Alexandria, it's just sad, but to me, what does it show? It shows that they were controlling information back then. This grid, the controllers, goes back 2,000 plus years. It goes back farther. I think it goes back about 5,000 years bare minimum. And again, it's something that we come under their influence at periodic times, depending on the location of our solar system in the galaxy. And it's all about vibration.
It is. I mean, vibration is so important to our lives, our everyday lives. And you can think about vibration in a chaotic way. You can think about vibration in a way where everything is in order, but vibration nonetheless.
The loss of the ancient world's single greatest archive of knowledge, the Library of Alexandria, has been lamented for ages, but how and why it was lost is a mystery. The mystery, well, that's what they say. The mystery exists not for a lack of suspects, but from an excess of them. Alexandria was founded in Egypt by Alexander the Great. His successor as Pharaoh, Ptolemy I Soter, founded the museum called the Museum of Alexandria, or Royal Library of Alexandria. In 283 BC, the museum was a shrine of the Muses, modeled after the Lyceum of Aristotle in Athens. The museum was a place of study which included lecture areas, gardens, a zoo, and shrines for each of the 9 muses, as well as the library itself. It's been estimated that at one time the Library of Alexandria held over 500,000 documents, from Assyria, Greece, Persia, Egypt, India, and many other nations. Over 100 scholars lived at the museum full-time to perform research, write, lecture, or translate and copy documents. The library was so large, it actually had another branch or daughter library at the Temple of Serapis. The first person blamed for the destruction of the library is none other than Julius Caesar himself. In 48 BC, Caesar was pursuing Pompey into Egypt when he was suddenly cut off by an Egyptian fleet at Alexandria, greatly outnumbered in enemy territory. Caesar ordered the ships in the harbor to be set on fire. The fire spread and destroyed the Egyptian fleet. Unfortunately, it also burned down part of the city, the area where the great library stood. Caesar wrote of starting the fire in the harbor, but neglected to mention the burning of the library. Such an omission proves little, since he was not in the habit of including unflattering facts while writing his own history. But Caesar was not without public detractors. He was solely to blame for the disappearance of the library. If he was solely to blame for the disappearance of the library, it's very likely significant documentation on the affair would exist today. And it's interesting, too, because Caesar, if you look at his battles, as he always documented the battles, he always made it look so much more grand than it really was. And again, that shows you how the victors write the history, and the history is not actually what happens. It's the tale from the victor's perspective. The second story of the library's destruction is more popular, thanks primarily to Edward Gibbon's The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, but the story is also a tad more complex. Theophilus was a patriarch of Alexandria from 385 to 412 AD. During his reign, the Temple of Serapis was converted into a Christian church, probably around 391 AD. And it's likely that many documents were destroyed then. The Temple of Serapis was estimated to hold about 10% of the overall Library of Alexandria's holdings. After his death, his nephew Cyril became the patriarch. Shortly after that, riots broke out, when Hyrax, a Christian monk, was publicly killed by order of Orestes, the city prefect. Orestes was said to be under the influence of Hypatia, a female philosopher and daughter of the last member of the Library of Alexandria, although it should be noted that some count Hypatia herself as the last head librarian. Alexandria had long been known for its violent and volatile politics. Christian, Jews, and pagans all lived together in the city. One ancient writer claimed there was no people who loved a fight more than those of Alexandria. Immediately after the death of Hyrax, a group of Jews who had helped instigate his killing lured more Christians into the street at night by proclaiming that the church was on fire. When the Christians rushed out, the largely Jewish mob slew many of them. After this, there was mass havoc as the Christians retaliated against both the Jews and the pagans, one of which was Hypatia. The story varies slightly depending on who tells it, but she was taken by the Christians, dragged through the streets, and murdered. Some regard the death of Hypatia as the final destruction of the library. Others blame Theophilus for destroying the last scrolls when he razed the temple of Serapis prior to making it a Christian church. Still others have confused both incidents and blame Theophilus for simultaneously murdering Hypatia and destroying the library, though it's obvious Theophilus died sometime prior to Hypatia. The final individual to get blamed for the destruction is the Muslim Caliph Omar. In 640 AD, the Muslims took the city of Alexandria. Upon learning of a great library containing all the knowledge of the world, the conquering general supposedly asked Caliph Omar for instructions. The Caliph has been quoted as saying of the library's holdings, "They will either contradict the Koran, in which case they are heresy, or they will agree with it, so they are superfluous." So allegedly, all the texts were destroyed by using them as tinder for the bathhouses of the city. Even then, it was said to have taken 6 months to burn all the documents. But these details from the Caliph's quote to the incredulous 6 months it supposedly took to burn the books weren't written down until 300 years after the fact. These facts condemning Omar were written by Bishop Gregory Bar Hebrus, a Christian who spent a great deal of time writing about Muslim atrocities without so much historical documentation. So who burned the Library of Alexandria? Unfortunately, most of the writers from Plutarch, who apparently blamed Caesar, to Edward Gibbons, a staunch atheist or deist who very much liked to blame Christians and blamed Theophilus, to Bishop Gregory, who was partly anti-Muslim, blame Omar, all had an axe to grind and consequently must be seen as biased. Probably everyone mentioned above had some hand in destroying parts of the library's holdings. The collection may have ebbed and flowed as some documents were destroyed or others were added. For instance, Mark Antony was supposed to have given Cleopatra over 200,000 scrolls for the library long after Julius Caesar is accused of burning it. It would quite likely be that if the museum was destroyed with the main library, the outlying daughter library at the Temple of Serapis continued on. Many writers seem to equate the Library of Alexandria with the Library of Serapis, though technically they were in two different parts of the city. The real tragedy is not the uncertainty of knowing who's to blame for the library's destructions, but that of the ancient history, literature, and learning that was lost forever. So what do you get, Miss Cynthia, when we talk about the burning of the Library of Alexandria? When did it happen, and what time period, or who really did it? I've always had my suspicions, but I want to see what the guides have to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, the guides are telling me this is a internal kind of a flame, and it was very, very, what do you call the word? It was very directed. It was very controlled. So even before there was a flame that gone through, somebody had come in and gotten out all of the really important scrolls and whatnot, and then hidden them away. And to this day, those are down in the Vatican.
Aha! Okay, that's awesome. So the Vatican has the most important stuff.
They do. They absolutely do, yeah.
And again, to me, I think a lot of this knowledge is going to go back to Atlantis and Atlantean culture and civilization. I think Atlantean culture is, for the most part, European culture.
Well, yeah, I mean, and when you said that, I experienced these things, and I call them truth bumps, but the goosebumps, that you get when you hit on something that's very true. But yeah, I mean, it has originalities way back then, and it's like the Vatican controls all of this information now, and they control what makes it out, what we get to read, and like you always talk about, the victors write everything.
They do. And so, we talk about the esoteric side of things, the occult side of things, and think about how ingrained it is in some people. There's that Twitter source for right-wing news, Jack Posebic, and he still tweets stuff like Harry Potter leads to demon possession, even though he's given you good information. When it comes to what the left is doing geopolitically, he's still tweeting out absurdities like that. And again, it's fear. It's the fear-based indoctrination that he doesn't realize is still the controllers. The controllers give us the fundamentalist point of view. Fundamentalism leads to disaster. Disaster. It's the source of so much death and tragedy because it blinds us when we think that we're doing good by destroying others. We're not doing good, and that's what's been used to justify so many atrocities and wars. Why are these things hidden? Why are they occult? Because it takes away the power structure of the powers that be.
Mm-hmm. And what's so sad and unfortunate in so many cases, we do what we are supposed to do, and when people wake up, usually it's because of some type of major tragedy. And personally, for me, it was a very dear friend who was very, very sick, and I was taking her to the doctors and the hospitals, and I was doing everything that they told me to do because I knew for sure, they said if I do these things, it's going to fix her, and it didn't. She got so ill. She actually passed away, and that was just heart-wrenching for me. But in that moment, I realized this system is so crooked, because I know now all of those things that she went through could have been healed naturally, could have been healed through the herbs, could have been healed through the elements, could have been healed through energy work and spirituality, some kind of form of understanding, that there is something greater than yourself, and it's not in this system. So we all have our stories, but usually it's something like that gets us to look a little bit closer, and it makes us say, hey, this does not make any sense. And that's what happened with me.
So many people, this makes me want to just touch on again the Book of Enoch, and this is a PDF on the Book of Enoch. And so, was this an extraterrestrial affair in so many ways, as Enoch was? Enoch's very fascinating in that it's written that Enoch walked with the Lord, quote unquote, and the Lord found him very, very just, and basically took him. And what is that he took him? And many people will point towards it being ascension, as there are legends that Enoch is now Metatron, an archangel, one of the highest archangels. Metatron and Sandalphon are thought to be, in some traditions, kind of like brothers, and Sandalphon is thought to be Elijah, and Metatron is thought to be Enoch, and both of them did not technically die when they were here on Earth. They were taken or translated, or something happened. And we've gone deep into this, and we've gotten information on both of these. And again, many things are distorted, so to speak, and actually kind of the inverse of what they really are. When it comes to this, the Book of Enoch, again, is one of those books that was hidden from a long time, but quoted. It's quoted in the Bible. It's referred to in the Bible several times, but then we didn't have it for so long. And of course, with the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi. We ended up getting various texts that were lost for 1900 plus years. The Romans, again, going to the Romans, they destroyed the last temple in 70 AD, and the Jewish people were sent all over. And it's the diaspora there, and there's been multiple diasporas too. If you look to when the Babylonian and the Persian exile, the whole Jewish mindset, it does change. It changes, and it becomes more messianic in some ways, in which, again, leading towards the Christianity that was to come. But we could get, and we have gotten into the Essenes and all that. There's so many, see, everything is so intertangled. We could talk about this for the rest of our lives. It's so intertangled. But people will look to the book of Enoch and say, see, these are the fallen angels. And again, the original definition of an angel is a messenger. And when we look to the first word used for God, or what we interpret to be God, or the Lord, and again, Lord is somebody that's the master, right? It could be, the Lord of the house, the master of the house, the Lord of, the town, the village, the square, whatever it is. It's a generic term. And unfortunately, God is also, it's been used kind of as a generic term. If you're talking about the creator of the universe, that's one thing, but there are many different beings that have been viewed as gods. And so in the original Elohim, it's translating to the mighty ones or powerful ones. And of course, you could read Sitchin's work, but it's not just Sitchin. There's others that have translated the Sumerian tablets, and we could see that, they're really talking about the Anunnaki. But in some sense, when we talk about the real Elohim, we're talking about stellar beings. We're talking about very, very high, powerful beings, true creators. So again, many times these beings will come in and usurp previous titles, language, take it for themselves. We see that because just think about this. A pharaoh was God on earth, and then Caesar basically became like a pharaoh. He became viewed as the living God on earth. And again, well, what were these gods? Were they thought to be literally the creator of the universe? Well, again, the Anunnaki claim that they created the human body. And again, we've gotten that it was just basically genetic manipulation, not necessarily in a positive way, as 90% of human DNA has been viewed as junk DNA, which is really just DNA that has been tinkered with and turned off, so to speak, but it's being turned on in these times as we keep going off on these trails. And I know Cindy has a lot to contribute. I'm going to jump over to her in a second. I just want to give you lines of thought. So who would write the book of Enoch? And from what perspective? Well, again, when you look at this, I think all you got to do is go really to the end. It talks about 200 of these beings that decide to come down. And then we get the Genesis 6 vibe. There's a little bit of Genesis 6, which talks about there were giants in those days. And then next thing you know, it talks about mighty men of old, men of renown. That doesn't sound really negative. Mighty men of old, men of renown. And then it goes into, and the Lord looked, and the humans were cohabitating and having offspring, and humanity was going to perish because of that offspring. And then, of course, we had the legends of the giants that would have humans over for a barbecue, but they were the barbecue, so to speak, to serve man. Yeah, exactly. So we have all this tied up, and then many people will look at the book of Enoch, the book of the Watchers, etc., and say this explains everything. These were fallen angels that came down and gave offspring, and then the Lord, again, rounded them up, and they're held until the end of days for their judgment. Well, look to human history. Look, if they're held to the end of days, what's the end of days? The last 5,000 years? Because we've had nonstop war, pestilence, famine the whole time. The dark energies have not been locked up until now. They've always been out there. So it's the inverse in so many ways is what we have. And not all the giants were bad. And again, when we look at things in black and white terms, we're really getting off track because it's always, a million shades of gray. As there are humans that we could say are angelic, and there are humans that we could say are demonic. It's the same thing with other species as well. Of course, certain species may tend, because of choices they've made, to be more towards the dark side and others to be more towards the light side.
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, I'm sitting here because Mike is explaining all of this stuff, and he is so good at it. He has so much information that's locked up in his mind, and I just love when he goes on a trail like that. It's just really impressive to take all of these writings and be able to string them together like that is really quite a feat. And when he was talking about Metatron, Metatron kind of pokes his head in, and he's like, "Well, yeah, I would like to talk." So
please share what Metatron wants to get
well, what he's talking about is these times and these days. We're looking at our children, we're looking at our star seeds, and even a lot of our elders are the beginnings of star seeds, and he is very much a guide in helping people translate what's happening to our bodies, why our bodies are changing, how they're changing, how do we use these gifts and abilities. So he's very much in with us in this new age. He sees a lot of things changing, and he knows, since like you said, there is just a million different colors of everything, and nothing is just black and white. He's here to help people paint that picture because he realizes that AI is it's something that's more of a plague than anything. But there are ways that you can mesh the AI with your life and still have your human experience and stay safe. Now, he is able to help mostly the children because they're the ones who are mostly interwoven with this AI, helping them separate it but use it for their growth. There is a way to do that, and he's here. And as I look at him, he looks like he has a lot of these strings of light. He's like this big light beam, but also he has what you would think to be hairs, but the hairs are like little fiber optic things. He's very, very colorful. He twinkles much like a Christmas tree. And I think that's just because of all the information that he does carry and the power that he holds. But he's definitely here to help mankind walk through this and make sure we keep a safe distance, because there is a safe distance with the AI, and with the earth there is a way to intertwine. And we do have some friends that we talk to on a regular basis, and I think she has also the ability to create a lot of goodness from the technology and actually use the technology of earth to create a way to take better care of earth, and that's what he does too.
You said she who?
Janet. Our dear Janet. Yes, yeah. She's very, very brilliant. She's very, very smart. And I know that she probably, I don't know if she knows she's worked with him or not, but I do definitely feel those energies are coinciding. So being open to these energies and expanding our lives, expanding our horizons, it's not a bad thing. It's something that we should do, and they've made us so afraid to do it. They've made us so afraid.
And in the past, you've described both Metatron and Sandalphon as being figures of titanic proportions.
Oh, they are huge. They're huge. It's difficult to contain and just say, get a basic sheet of what they're showing me. They're showing me disproportionately what they look like as best as they can, but they're huge.
Absolutely. And so when we look at Enoch in relation to Metatron, what is the relationship you get? What would Metatron say the relationship is between him and the historical Enoch?
Between him and the historical Enoch is a system that's broken down to one experience to be able to translate another experience and to help other people. So it's more of an understanding.
Would you okay, so traditionally, if we look to the Kabbalah, there's that legend that when the Lord took Enoch, he was transformed into Metatron. Is that the case, or is it more the case that Enoch was perhaps a sliver of Metatron's consciousness?
You can almost say it's both, but him having to translate into human form, because they're telling me there was quite a lot of AI, but there was also in that time the ability to do things like Yeshua did, like bilocate, and they knew all of these things and tricks about the human body, but he wanted to be in human form so he could build more of a bridge between those that were coming here and between those that are coming here now, and he wanted to be able to have that higher definition to look up and then guide people.
And he's so big and vast that all his consciousness couldn't be contained by a human form.
No, not at all. So yes, this part of him, and this is where we can get into fractals too. And that how many fractals, we could talk a little bit about Christ consciousness and the fractals and how many fractals are here on the planet right now. And there's several. You know, it's just not always easy to define who's what and who, but we know inside if we have this pulling, this yearning, or this thing where we can relate to these angels or we feel their presence, then you can bet there's probably a little bit of them in you.
Yeah, and there are humans. So if you're not getting what Cindy is coming out and saying, is that these angels do walk amongst us today. Mm-hmm. Not in their entirety, because these beings are so vast that the human body would never be able to hold their energy. Their energy is too strong. And even some of us that are doing energy work and our energy bodies, our Merkabas, are developing perhaps at such a fast rate, sometimes it can be detrimental to our physical. Mm-hmm. Like my energy body was going too far ahead of my physical body and was actually causing more physical problems because the energy was exceeding what the physical body can hold. And again, things like Qigong can help to balance and calm and soothe these energies. It's a very, very powerful practice where things like Kundalini Yoga can increase the growth of the Merkaba, can increase the energy going into our light bodies, but I feel like the good way to balance it is with the Qigong. And, you know, could be dangerous, as Cindy always wants me to mention, initiating the Kundalini energy and accelerating it. The Kundalini energy is so transformative. If you're not prepared for it, it's like running 220 energy through a 110 house, and it could absolutely fry your circuits and cause all sorts of problems. And I think the reason I didn't have that problem was because of my Qigong practice and also past life, you know, having done so many lives, basically living as a monk and doing nothing but meditation and energy work. So you had spoken about Yeshua and bilocation, and we had talked about that the other day. There's so many great conversations that we don't get on tape, that we don't get videos of, that we need to get more of these conversations, and EEARTS is where we're going to be putting them all. So tell us more about the bilocation.
Well, in the, you could say it is in the golden age, Yeshua knew how to slow his heartbeat, how to slow his organs, how to slow his body, so that he could actually not just be in one spot. He could be in other spots at once and go to see people and look to be physical. So they knew all of these secrets. They were very careful at who they taught these things to, but it wasn't just him that could do that. There's many beings that have come back and that still do that, and they stay in these very pristine places in earth that are unpolluted, which help them do these things. You know, right now the earth is being so polluted, that actually makes it more and more difficult for us to do that. But in these pristine caves, in these very sacred locations, these beings can still come and do that today.
This is Yogananda, Parahamsa Yogananda, that many are aware of. His teacher, Sri Yukteswar, his master, his guru means teacher. When his teacher was getting close to passing over and leaving the physical body, Paramahamsa Yogananda was over 100 miles away. And again, these were days where mostly he walked or he took a train. So it would take a while to get back to his master. And so his master literally appeared in a physical form to him in front of his very eyes. And he even said, "How are you here? You're back in, I think it was Lahore or wherever they were." And he was bilocating because he had the ability to do that. And one of the things that we've talked about, but want to get across, see, these things are all the type of things that were contained in the Library of Alexandria. This is what the Vatican knows. They don't want to share with you. They want you believing a fundamentalist viewpoint. It just basically locks on the mind. It keeps us from being able to realize just how powerful we are, because they don't want us knowing how powerful we are. So this was done and has been done by many yogis, by many Buddhist monks, and many of other traditions as well, that still held the knowledge and the techniques. Again, if you're going to have a TikTok mentality and 3 minutes is the max you could spend on anything, you're not going to be able to achieve anything of any significance in the bigger scheme of things with consciousness. It takes hours, days, weeks, months, years of dedicated practice, decades of dedicated practice in order to achieve those type of things. And even with that, it's often exceptional individuals that their souls have already been working on this path for many, many lifetimes. Each life is just one page in the much bigger book. Or you could view it as a chapter. Each life is a chapter. But we are eternal. And so we have all the time, as long as we don't buy into the AI Borg, because that's what they want us to do. They want us to throw away everything that is beautiful. And they do that by controlling the narrative. So with the Book of Enoch, they want you to think that the dark ones are locked up to the end of days. Oh, we're in the end of days now. Yeah, but how about the wars that never stopped for really a single year upon the planet for the last 5,000 years? Followed by famines, followed by pestilence. It's just an endless cycle, and it's the controller's cycle. They've burned everything. This is why occult is a term that they want you to be terrified of. It's the occult. We're not supposed to know this. God doesn't want us to know this. Well, you should change that word God to controllers. The controllers don't want you to know it. Not source, not God, the true God. This is all the distortion. So the dark ones haven't been locked up. Not at all. And, in a metaphorical sense, we've been locked up because we've been in a lower vibration where we can't connect to the true benevolent beings that are on 50 and above.
Well, I think what we're coming to now, though, which is really, really exciting, is we are being able to connect to our higher selves, to our 5D selves. But in order to do that, we need to heal, and we need to understand that ultimately, we came here for an experience. So in that sense, we're never really broken. But we are here to come and have experiences. We are here to have new understandings and bring forth new experiences from one life to the next. And, reconnecting with your higher self is one way to figure out what you came to do here on this life, on this journey. And when you are able to remove those energetic blocks, then you are able to connect with your heart chakra to your higher self, and then understand what you've come here for. And then that can take away the illusion that you were ill in any way.
Yeah, there's so many concepts that are just incorrect, and so, the thought that the dead sleep until the last day when they'll be resurrected at the last trumpet, that's just wrong. Because we know many beings. I mean, I'm blessed to have Cindy and also have some abilities myself to perceive beings on different densities. But I mean, I knew when my mom passed over, she didn't go to sleep in the sense that her consciousness is not working. It's all just black. It's all just nothingness until you're, awoken at the last trumpet. That's absolutely a falsehood. It's not even close to being correct. We've made contact with many entities, dozens and dozens of entities. We could see Zeke. I still get glimpses of Zeke. I see him pass by me all the time. And he was actually in between my chair and Cindy's chair when we were on the porch, and I was sending energy out, and I could feel his energy. of course, I'm trained and have been trained to feel and sense energy. So it's no big deal for me, but I could feel the thickness of his energy body that's still there. So he's just not in the nothingness either. And animals have souls. This is all stuff that's been hidden in the West, and the West dominates everything, as we see. It's been from Roman times and other empires before that. And these things are just not correct. They're all controller BS that's given to us. And, we could say, well, everybody should have the ability to basically, have their own belief set. But when the belief set that's pushed on us is one that really changes our perception as to who and what we truly are, then that's something that's just wrong.
Right. When it's based on fear and judgment and shunning family members and people in your life, if it makes you afraid of them and makes you come up with conclusions that there's something wrong with them or they're dangerous because they might know some of these secrets, I find that to be really unfortunate and really sad. And I would hope that people can understand when other people are going through an awakening. It can really be quite a process, because then you're going to become awake to all of these other truths and all of these other understandings. And it does take time to sift through the information and get a feel for, okay, this is real, this is not, because it suddenly becomes important to you. It's suddenly important. It's no longer a nothing burger, no big deal. It's very important, and you really feel that your whole life essence needs to understand things at a deeper level. And that can get some people in trouble, and it can get some people, it can make their family just sort of kind of not understand them. And a lot of people go through that, and it's unfortunate. So I really hope that, moving forward, we can always just sort of stand back and allow each other to have these experiences, to allow them to have spiritual growth, and not be judgmental that they want to learn something different than what's the mainstream story that they want us to learn.
So we can see that really it does coincide with the establishment of the church, quote unquote. Goes back to Constantine. It was going on from before then, but also everything ramped up then, and then with Islam as well. So in 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea, present-day Turkey, First Ecumenical Council, though he didn't have much faith, it was called by Constantine, who thought this would bring peace to the Roman Empire, because Christianity was growing by leaps and bounds. What were the accomplishments? They started the progress of the Nicene Creed, aroused discussion of the canon of the New Testament, officially set a date for Easter. So again, this is 300 years after Yeshua was walking around. And, some of you might be familiar with the Nicene Creed. We believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and we believe in one Lord, Jesus Christ, the Christ, the only begotten. So this all came about, they started to put together in 325 AD, 300 years after Yeshua. They decided what the official belief set was going to be, and it kept developing after that. And of course, we had the Protestant Reformation, but still, everything really started at this time frame. Other groups like the Gnostics were persecuted, and many, many others that followed. And then, of course, many of the pagan holy places were basically razed, and then they built churches on top of them because they were placed on centers of high energy. So again, this could get into talking about the layout of Washington, D.C., for instance, Yeah, I mean, because this is, again, all about power. Power, and control. And they can't have you knowing all this, because then you would be on a firm basis with them. But the way D.C. was laid out as well, it's all totally done purposefully to control our energies, to control their minds. As we know, many of the founding fathers were Freemasons. And again, Yeshua, and the world, most of the world still refers to him as Jesus, and they'll always say, I believe in Jesus. Well, Jesus wasn't. Again, Yeshua was,
Right.
but the Jesus that comes from the controllers. That whole blood sacrifice mindset. They still have blood sacrifices. What do you think war is? War is a blood sacrifice to their dark gods. This is all how they control everything. So the burning of the Library of Alexandria was a momentous event because it started the true downfall of any real knowledge in the West. And this is why when people say, "What should I read?" Automatically you want to go grab the Bible because it's safe, because they've indoctrinated you to do that. But I would read the Shiva Sutras or the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali or the Tao Te Ching. I mean, there's way more info there. You could read into definitely the Hermetic texts, and we're going to be going into Hermeticism in the next video as this one's running long. But this book burning is still going on. There's a cyber book burning going on right now, and they're silencing anybody now just like they silenced people back then. So if you believe the mainstream version, you might as well be believing MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News.
I know. And in all of this information, they allow certain bits of information out, but they definitely put away the information that's very, very transformative and gives us a lot of information as far as, what are we here for? Where did we come from? What are our capabilities? All of that is very much hidden away, and that's very, very deliberate.
Absolutely. So as always, guys, make sure you're subscribed to both channels, Evolutionary Energy Arts and EEARTS, and thank you for your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi, because that keeps us going. As you know, Evolutionary's been demonetized, and EEARTS is 90% there. So without the support on Patreon and Ko-Fi, we couldn't keep it going. And medicinal foods, use coupon code EEA, get a discount, help to detox and boost your immune system. If you need to set up a appointment with us, it's evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com or earts@protonmail.com. Keep fighting the darkness and illuminating the minds of all those that will accept it.
Indeed. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.